Hi, thanks for joining Excel Basics, where Excel is simplified. Have you ever found yourself scrolling down, having to scroll back up just to see your headers? Or maybe you have a large data set and have to scroll to the right to see certain values, but then you have to scroll to the left to see other columns that you have here. Well, I'll be showing you exactly how to prevent that so that you always have the data that you need visible to you. The main points we'll be reviewing are how to quickly lock or freeze your top row or first column, how to freeze multiple rows or columns and how you can make use of them, and finally, how to freeze rows and columns simultaneously using the split feature. All right, let's get to it. So by default, anytime you open a spreadsheet, you lose sight of your headers up here when you scroll down, right? And what could happen is after you scroll down, if you're not very familiar with the spreadsheet, you might look at values and be like, wait, what are these values? What do they mean? For example, I see IT and then specialty products. I see an employee. What does this mean? Are they part of IT or are they part of specialty products? I might scroll to the right and then see some numbers here and not know what they are. So then I have to make sure I highlight this to know which row I need to get to, go all the way back up, and then see, okay, this column, these numbers, they mean age. Perfect. Now, the difference between these two is one is department, one is business unit. Got it. Let me scroll back down to that row and see what the values are for this person, right? Well, to prevent that and make sure you always have your headers visible to you, what you'll want to do is scroll up, click on the View tab, hit the Freeze Panes drop-down, and finally hit Freeze Top Row. Very simple. Now you could scroll down and look at that. You have your headers visible to you at all times. You could scroll, there they are. You could, at any point, if you like, you could hit the drop down here for your headers and sort, filter, etc. You don't have to scroll all the way up. So that's a great feature that Excel has, freeze panes. Now, occasionally, you might receive a spreadsheet that has more than just headers. So let me unfreeze. By the way, you might have an urge to press the back button to remove freeze panes. Let me tell you that it doesn't work with Excel, at least not with the version that I have. Instead, you're going to want to click here and then unfreeze panes. All right, so now you receive a new spreadsheet. The spreadsheet has more than one header column. Let's say there's an overarching header column, employee data, right? I'm going to make it pretty. Go home. Let me merge. I'll just add a little bit of color. All right. So you receive the spreadsheet and it has this overarching header or title, and then you have your normal headers. If you want to freeze your headers row, you go to View, Freeze Panes, you hit Freeze Top Row. All of a sudden, you scroll down and you realize you don't have your headers. Why? Because instead of locking or freezing your headers, you're locking the top row, which is this overarching header or title. So how do we do it so that we grab both? Let me unfreeze. What you're going to want to do is select the row below the rows that you want to freeze or lock. For example, I want rows 1 and 2, so I'm going to go ahead and click on row 3, go back to freeze panes, and this time I'm going to select the first option, which is freeze panes. Click on that, and now there you go. Look at that. I've got both. I could scroll up, down, I could still sort, filter. That's perfect. Now, in other occasions, you might want to have additional rows above your header. I'll give you a quick example. Let me add a few rows here. So my panes are unfrozen. So I'm going to insert. All right. So right now everything's normal. I have rows on top of my header. Let's say I want to freeze all of these rows, including my header. I'm going to go ahead and click on row 7, freeze panes, freeze panes. There you go. Now, the cool thing about this is I could go ahead and use this space however I would like. I could add charts up here. I could add additional data. I could add an additional table that has some valuable information. I could add a legend. So this is a very useful feature as well. For example, if we had financial data here, you would have dollar bills, you would have invoice numbers, dates. Let's say I find some data points that stand out to me. So I want to go ahead and highlight them. I'll do orange. Let's say I find some other ones that I want to highlight in a different color because they have different meaning for me. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. I'm going to add, sprinkle a little bit of red here and there. All right. So I could add a legend. So I could say green equals okay, orange. I want to make sure I monitor those, and then red are risks. They're risky, right? Make it prettier. Green, orange, and red. Now, anytime I open up the spreadsheet, I come over here, see these highlights, I immediately know what they mean. In addition, if I'm going to be sharing this with somebody else, if I'm going to send it or even present to multiple people, I actually don't have to explain much. Why? Because they've got their headers, they know what the data is, and they've got this legend here. So right away, they know that some of these things are risks. There are risks there. Some of these things are great. Other things we want to make sure we monitor. So that's just one example of how you could use spaces above your headers when you use freeze panes. Let me go ahead and undo this. All right, and again, you could add charts if you want. You could make your empty space even larger. So let me go ahead and unfreeze just to show you really quick. I'll insert these here. Okay, and then I'm going to select the bottom row there, freeze panes, right? So now my empty section is even bigger. I could add, like a little dashboard up here that represents the data down here. Other ways you could use this, let me delete this, remove the panes. Let's say this is all employee data. Let's say these top 3 employees are special. Let's say there's an investigation going on with these 3 employees. So I'm going to hit row 5 and freeze panes again. Okay, now I not only have my headers, but I have the 3 special employees. Something's going on. They might be terminated. So I want to spot check their details, their data, against the data down here, right? I want to spot check, see if there are any similar other employees. They might have something that ties into these 3, so I want to make sure I include them, give them a call, etc. So there's different ways to use multiple frozen panes at a time. So that's freezing panes for rows. Now you might say, well, that's all good. I could scroll up and down, but what if the ID column is very important to me? I want to keep an eye on it all the time. But then I have to scroll to the right to see age, which is also important, gender, which is also important, but now I lose sight of my ID column. How can I make sure that it's always there? Well, similar to your rows, you can go to View, click on Freeze Panes, and this time we're going to click on Freeze First column. When it says first, it's first from the left. So first column, boom, there you go. Now, anytime I scroll right, left, doesn't matter. I always have my ID column visible, and that's perfect. Well, what if I like the ID column, but I also want name and job title. Let me unfreeze this. Similar to rows, instead of selecting rows, you're going to want to select your column. So if I select column C, freeze panes, and then hit freeze panes again, it's going to freeze or lock any columns to the left of my selection. So if I do C, it's going to freeze columns A and B. If I do D, it's going to do A through C. So let's try it out. I'm going to click on D, freeze panes, and look at that. I now have ID, name, job title. Perfect. I could see all the data that I need on the right and exactly what I want to see on the left. And I could scroll down and there's the data. But look at that. I no longer have my headers. I have to scroll back up. I could go left, right, perfect. But then when I go down, I lose headers. I don't want that. So how can I keep both the columns that I want and the rows that I want? Let me show you that. That's where split comes in. So what I'll do is I'm going to click on cell B2, Leonard Dixon. The reason for that is because once I hit split, it's going to split northwest of my cell. Meaning, if I hit split here, anything above Leonard Dixon, any rows above are going to get frozen, and any columns to the left of Leonard are going to get frozen. So let's try it out. Split. Automatically Excel adds this gray line going across and this gray line going down. Now I could scroll down, my headers are there, and I could scroll left or right and my column is there. This is perfect. Well, what if I want more than just this column and more than just this row? Well, let's hit split to undo. I could go ahead and click on any cell that I want. As soon as I click on it, I'll go with IT coordinator. As soon as I click on it, again, just remember northwest. Anything above this cell, any rows will be frozen. Anything to the left will be frozen. So let's hit split. And now look at that. My gray line is now going across down here and then downward this way. Now I scroll right. Look at that. My two columns, perfect. And I scroll down, my top rows, perfect. So that's a way that you could use both freeze panes and split. Well, that's it for this video. If you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and check out my channel for additional Excel tips and tricks. And remember, let's excel together.